Hi everybody and welcome back to the Upper Room. This week I wanted to talk about the image of Our Lady de Guadalupe. I recently took my family to Our Lady Queen of the Angels Cathedral in Los Angeles. And there at Our Lady Queen of the Angels is one of the only relics of Our Lady de Guadalupe image in the United States. I was a tour guide at the Our Lady Queen of the Angels, and my family's not Catholic, and so they don't know where the image came from, as do a lot of people don't know. I saw recently that Hillary Clinton went down to Mexico to the cathedral there where the image is, and she asked the cardinal, "It's a beautiful image. Who's the artist?" So that's why I wanted to make this video, because not everybody knows who the artist is. So I'll start off by explaining to you how the image came into being. In the year 1517, the Protestant Reformation was just coming underway with Martin Luther, and about 5 million people left the Catholic Church to start another form of Christianity. In the year 1537, the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to a young Indian boy named Juan Diego. And she asked him, and when she called him in an endearing way, Juanito, Juanito Dieguito, and it's a very nice and endearing way in Spanish to call your children or call your child if they were named Juan. And so she was calling him as his mother. So when she called him, she spoke to him. She showed him that she knew who he was and that he was the smallest of all of her children, and that she asked him to tell the bishop of the Catholic Church to have a cathedral built there in her honor for her son, Jesus Christ. Now, the number one thing is, why would we listen to an apparition of the Blessed Virgin Mary? Number one. And number two, how do we know that this is real? Number two, okay? So for centuries, all over the world, the Blessed Virgin has appeared to many different cultures, and there are even accounts in ancient writings in all different languages that speak about a woman appearing to different cultures and teaching them about Christ. Okay? Now, the reason why we listen to her is because everything that she asks us to do, especially Catholics, does not go against what we believe. It actually coexists with what we believe. And so she tells us to go to confession. She tells us to pray. She tells us to pray the rosary. She tells us to avoid the occasion of sin. And she tells us to fast and pray. She also informs us of questions that we may have about certain places. She tells us that this place, purgatory, exists and it's real. She shows the visionaries. These are generally children who she appears to, and a vision is not like it's not like a vision what they see. It's not like something that happens in your mind. Generally, it's a number of children who see her, and they go into something called a state of ecstasy, to where they are filled with so much joy at the sight of her beauty and the sound of her voice that they are overcome with happiness, and nothing around them matters. No one generally can see her but the visionary, and she generally leaves the visionary with some type of secret or some type some type of message from heaven that she wants to impart to the rest of the world. When she got in contact with Juan Diego at El Tepeyac, which is a little mountain down there in Mexico, he was a little Indian, and many of the Indians in those days were Mayan Indians and believing in their old beliefs. So sacrifice was regular. they thought the end of the world was coming because of the Mayan calendar. So they were sacrificing thousands of people on a daily basis. Children, women, men, elderly, young. It didn't matter. The best of the best was for the gods so that they would have good crops, so that they would be blessed. Right? That's what they believed. But when Mary appeared to Juan Diego, she informed him, no more sacrifice. My son Jesus is the one true sacrifice. So this is another reason why we would listen to her. In every culture all over the world, when she appears, she generally appears as something of that culture. In other words, she'll be wearing a ceremonial gown that the culture may have, that they hold in a high regard. Her skin complexion may be that of that race, and she may even have features of that race, and may be dressed in garments that represent something of that race or of the indigenous area of where they live. Juan Diego is not the only person that she appeared to. She has appeared to hundreds of other people all over the world. And the church investigates these claims, and the investigation can be very extensive. There are many claims that are made every year about certain things. But when a claim holds validity, the church will send a team of investigators. Sometimes these people don't even have a faith life, but they'll maybe psychologists or psychiatrists that will try to investigate the person that makes the claim, and they will also based off of the other apparitions from all over the world, they can compare what this person has gone through in a visionary that sees her and compared to someone who hasn't. So they know they have a way of determining whether something truly happened or not. So when she appeared to Juan Diego's uncle was very sick, okay, and he had gone to tell the bishop. The bishop told him to bring him a sign if this was real. So he left and was going to go back to see her, but his uncle became ill. So rather than going to see her, he decided to go and try and get a priest for his uncle because he was dying. And so he, instead of going around a way that he normally would have gone, where he would have run into her, he decided to go around the hill, the backside. And she knew what he was doing, and so she went off and cut him off and told him, hey, how did you tell the bishop? And he said, yes, but my uncle's very sick. And she told him, am I not here? I, who am your mother. So why didn't he tell her? She will take care of it. And so we find out that she also appeared to his uncle and healed him, and he didn't die. Okay, so he wasn't the only one that saw her. His uncle also saw her, and so finally, after his uncle was well, she brought Juan Diego back to El Tepeyac, and he was wearing on him something called a tilma. It's kind of like an apron or like a poncho. It's very crudely fashioned. It's made by hand. The stitching is very large, and it's made from cactus fibers. Okay, because that's what they had in the area. They were Indians. They lived off the land, and so this is how they made certain clothing and stuff. And so one of the things that they made was called a tilma. It's like a poncho or an apron, so you don't get your clothes too messy and stuff. Well, he was wearing it, and she told him to gather some roses. First of all, there were roses up on the hill, and there was permafrost at the time of year, and that he was kind of amazed that roses were even growing. So as he collected up the roses, she arranged them in his poncho, in the tilma. And he held the roses up in this, like your shirt, if you were to collect things in your shirt and you were to hold it up. He held it up like that, and then she told him to go and see the bishop now. And when he went to go see the bishop, he stood outside for many hours dealing with the guards or the people that were in charge that weren't going to let him go right in. Finally, he got in to see the bishop, and when he walked over to see him, he let down his tilma, and the roses fell out, and the image of Our Lady de Guadalupe magically appeared on his tilma. That's where the image came from, as the story goes. Now, at this time, it was 1537. Okay, as you can see, as you know, we don't have lots of advancements in technology in those days. So when they received the image, when the bishop saw this appear right before his eyes, and he looked at the image, he could see that it was an image of the Blessed Virgin Mary, dressed in clothing like that represented the Indian people. Her skin complexion was that of the Indian people. Even her hair color was black. Some of the garments that she was wearing represented them, and she had one special significant item that she was wearing that the bishop noticed, because he's a Spaniard, and he was there trying to help the Indians from the invasions and things like that. She was wearing a brooch, and the brooch was a Spanish brooch. And it had a cross on it. Okay, so this was something that Spaniards would have worn, and so this was an indication to him that she knew what was going on, and she knew that the bishop, that he himself was a Spaniard, and so that's where the image came from, and it became a symbol of faith. Lots of things about the image is she's clothed in the sun. There's a sun behind her, standing on the moon. Okay, and she has her mantle up above. It's covered in stars with a crown of 12 stars. Okay, this is significant of the book of Revelations. Behold, I saw a woman standing on the moon, clothed in the sun, wearing a crown of 12 stars, that John wrote on Patmos. Now, what they did with the image was they hung it up inside the basilica. Electricity wasn't invented yet. All they had was candlelight. They didn't put it behind glass. They just hung it up in there like tapestry. Over time, many people began to believe, okay, because of this image. Around the time of the Protestant Reformation, 5 million people left the church. A few years later, in 1537, when she appeared to Juan Diego, I may be getting that year wrong, it may be 1531. When she appeared to Juan Diego, nearly 9 million Mexican Indians were baptized into the faith because of this event. So 5 million left, and nearly twice as many were baptized back in. So the church in itself lost none of its ranks, okay, in numbers. It was hung up in the basilica with soot from candlelight and weather and different temperatures in Mexico. A tilma made of cactus fiber would have lasted 15 to 30 years because it's organic material, and it would have eventually fallen apart. The image and the tilma itself is over 500 years old and still in good condition. That is inexplicable. It is inexplicable. Number one. Number two, with recent advancements in technology, we were able to discover more amazing facts about the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. They looked at the image through an X-ray imaging to see if there was any undersketching under the image, because in those days, that's how an artist would have drawn the image. There would have been an undersketching before he began to paint. There is absolutely no undersketching. It doesn't exist. Not only that, the colors themselves on the tilma is as if it is the tilma itself. Through testing, the colors on the tilma is no paint, chalk, dye, or anything that is existent to mankind. It is almost as if it is as if the cactus fibers themselves were that color, even though the cactuses do not create colors such as those, such as a teal green or anything like that. So it is just there, and it's not as if it was made with any type of paint or anything. So another thing that's interesting about the image is that if it was a type of paint, right? So let's say if someone did start painting, if you were to paint a head and then a neck, and then you would paint the clothes that would go over the neck, if you were to take the image and you were to turn it around, on the back of the image would be, you would see the neck portion that would be covering the clothed portion, because that was the first part that was painted. If you turn it over to the back, it looks exactly like the front. It's as if two people painted the front and the back simultaneously with each brush stroke at the exact same time, painting two identical images all the way down. That is completely inexplicable. It gets better. They decided to take a stethoscope and place it on the womb of the image. And on the womb of the image, a heartbeat can be heard with a heartbeat of 115 times per minute. That's of the normal heart rate of a human being. Okay? Not only that, they decided, because she has stars on her mantle, and the way that the image is created, or the way the image is shown, is as if someone is looking at the stars from outside of the universe, as if you're outside of the universe and looking at all the stars. They decided to take the constellations in the night sky on that day that she appeared to Juan Diego, and they took a star map and they overlaid it on top of the image with all the constellations, and they lined up the stars that lined up with the mantle on the image, and the constellations that were there on her womb was the constellation Leo, and around her head was, I can't remember the name of the constellation, but I think it was the crown of Virgo or something. So in her womb was Leo, and Jesus is the Lion of Judah, and around her head was a crown of 12 stars. This was a discovery that was made sometime later after the image they started to do some type of scientific research on the image. Not only that, no matter what temperature it is inside of the basilica, the image itself is always a constant 98.6 degrees. Perfect body temperature, whether it's hot or cold in the basilica. That is inexplicable. From two different angles, if you look at the image from one angle, her skin looks like an olive complexion. If you look at the image from another angle, she looks almost like a tan, darker skin complexion like the Mexican Indians, and from the other angle with the olive complexion, almost Middle Eastern. With recent advancements in technology, they were able to discover that in the eye of the image were images of Juan Diego and the indigenous people of Mexico. And when they noticed this, they decided to get some optometrists to come and look at the eye to tell them if this is something that an artist could create. The optometrist said that the images of the eye, or reflections, is a reflection as if it was in a real eye that Juan Diego was standing in front of. And it is a reflection of Juan Diego in the eye of the image of Our Lady Guadalupe. The optometrists state that after examining the eye on the image, it represents a perfect replication of the way a human eye would react if it was looking at something, not something that an artist could replicate. No artist could have done something like this, as they state. So this is another form of investigation that the church used for people who are experts in their field. One such optometrist actually passed out when looking at the eyes, and when they woke him up, he said that he fainted because the eyes appeared real and looking at him. What? Real and looking at him? It gets better, okay? Some years down the line, they decided to do some renovations of the cathedral. So they had a painter up there doing some varnish on some wood, and he had some acetone acetone or some type of acid that they used for the varnish. And so he was on the ladder and he spilled the acetone, acetone spill off, and it went onto the image, and it actually burned a section of the image, and it kind of stained it, discolored it, and the guy ran away. He was so scared because this is this country's national treasure. Come to find out that the portion of the image that was damaged reconstituted itself. It healed. It put itself back together from the damage. Completely inexplicable. This became such a huge topic of controversy that the state of Mexico and these group of people called Guadalupanos that were dedicated to defending the image. There was wars set out over this in Mexico. It was just such a big means of faith and belief, because that this image is quite literally from God. Okay, God is the artist that has made this image. From one direction, the image is one color, and from another direction, the image is another color. And if dyes were used, dyes would have faded long ago, but the colors still look vibrant and new, even after 500 years. And experts say that no artist could have replicated where it changes colors in such a way without certain types of reflective, types of materials to use. But that's not present there. The only thing that they can compare this to would be how colors change on a beetle's shell, or how or on a bird's wing, how a color would change, or on butterflies' wings, is the only thing that they can compare it to. So what they're saying is that this type of color changing effect only happens in nature, and the only one who created nature is God. So again, atheists can say all they want, but they cannot explain this image. In fact, speaking of atheists, many atheists even had lots of doubts about the image, and because it was creating such a large following, they had an atheist, a certain atheist, decided to make an exact replica of the image, and they actually put it in the basilica, and it only lasted about 12 years before it became rotted and started falling apart. Another atheist was so concerned about the situation that he decided to take a bomb and put it inside some flowers. After the incident with the acid falling onto the image, they decided to put it behind glass, and they put it behind the altar at the cathedral. And the bomb was placed on the altar in the flowers, and it exploded, destroying the altar and bending back some metal crosses. Those big metal brass crosses are actually under glass. The blast from the explosion, they were straight before, now they look like a backwards S. That's how strong the blast was. And nothing happened to the image. Nothing happened to the image. Everything in that vicinity was destroyed. The image and the glass that was protecting the image should have been completely destroyed, and nothing happened to it. How do you explain that? So the next time you look at the image of Our Lady de Guadalupe, know who the artist is. The artist is God, and the image comes from heaven by the hands of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the mother of Christ Jesus our Lord. So thanks again for watching The Upper Room. I'm Jared. I'll see you again next week.